Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 298. Let's see, I was black here. My opponent kicked off with c4. And I decided to go into a symmetrical setup, not what I usually play. Usually I play knight to f6, which you see is the top choice here. And that's kind of a waiting, kind of a waiting move. It also stops e4, though. So when you play c5, one of the possibilities that white has here is he can play e4 immediately, which not the most common move. Usually an English player will continue with moves like g3 and knight f3. So I was a bit surprised to see this, or knight c3. These are the top three choices. I might as well put them all on there, knight f3, knight c3, g3. But my opponent immediately played e4. So it's an interesting move, just trying to grab control of this square in the center. And I could play, say with e6 and d5, trying to contest that. Looks like that's one of the choices there, e6. I could ignore it with g6 and, well, go for the dark squares, basically, because he's ignoring these dark squares along here. But I decided to go for continuing in this symmetrical idea. Played e5, and position is about even. So my opponent played d3 here, just completing his little pawn triangle, the Botvinnik triangle, it's called. So I could play d6 here, and I eventually will. But there was no need to play it immediately. Well, the engine likes that, but it also likes knight c6. I played knight f6, and he goes knight f3, and then I went d6. So the question is, in this position, how does black ever get any kind of advantage? How are you going to win this game if you're just following symmetrically in your opponent's footsteps? Well, let's watch. So the first little bit of asymmetry occurs here, where I play knight c6 instead of developing a bishop. No big deal. Knight c3. Knight d4. Okay, so I go ahead and plant a knight here. You know, the knights are going to these squares anyway. That's what that's what these pawn setups are indicating. And I just want to see if he's going to exchange the knight or leave it there. He decides to leave it there for a move. So I develop my bishop, and now he decides to exchange. He could have played knight to knight to d5, and then if I castled, we'd once again be in a completely symmetric situation. But he takes, and I take with the c pawn. Let's back up. Is it possible to take with the e pawn? Yeah, the engine even likes that. I'm a little worried about taking with the e pawn. Just to let you guys know what I'm thinking is that eventually there's this pawn push from e4 to e5 to undermine d6 at some future point in the game, and so if I castle kingside, this might be part of a kingside attack with f4 and e5. But that's kind of a long way away, and it looks like the engine thinks I have plenty of time to prepare for that if I want to. So I was maybe overly concerned, but I decided to take with the c pawn, and that's okay too. So he continues a knight d5, and I should take it right away. I was leaving this bishop here as bait, in a sense, to see if he would take it. But actually the engine thinks he should take it, and after considering things, I guess I have to agree. So if he had just grabbed here... now, I thought at first maybe the engine was wrong because, well, the engine will count material. So those two bishops count as a material advantage for white, and so they'll give white some edge. My thinking was that one of those bishops is pretty useless. And so here I've got a good bishop and a knight, and I would be okay playing this, and it's probably playable. This half a point advantage is not that great. But what can happen in the long run is the position can open up, and then this will turn into a good bishop. So if white can preserve his bishop pair through all the complications and open up the position, then in the long run it'll be an advantage. So I would have to play actively here if I wanted to play this line, try and take advantage of his cramped light squared bishop before it liberates itself. Okay, he didn't go for that. He went for b3, and I developed my bishop, and I was even thinking of taking his knight here, but he decided to take the knight, and So we get a position which is still about even. Again, the engine thought he should have grabbed the bishop instead of the knight. So still no idea how to break through here. I go for rook c8, putting the rook on the open file, and maybe with ideas of playing a6 and b5, trying to undermine. Or if I can, maybe get in f5 and a later d5, as these are ways I might be able to break through. He goes with bishop g4, and there's no way to avoid the exchange of this bishop. This bishop has nowhere good to go. So I just place my queen here, and take back with the queen. If I were to take with a pawn, let's see, does the engine have an opinion about that? It thinks they're about equal. I was going to say, if I take with a pawn, it has advantages and disadvantages. It eliminates any idea of a break on f5, but it supports the idea with a pawn there. It supports the idea maybe of playing d5 at some point and breaking that way. So either way, I took with the queen. He plays a4 here, expanding on the queen side. Still edge to white. Bishop e7. Now I'm getting out of the way of the f5 push. That's how my plan is to break through. Plays h3, and I push on with f5. And still about even. But now I have some hope. There's only one pawn in the way of this d pawn here, so I have some ideas that I can push that in the right circumstances. When there were two pawns, when white had his pawn there and his pawn here, it was pretty much preventing my d pawn from ever moving. So that was one advantage of exchanging off that e pawn. Okay, I take. He plays queen e2, and I just retreat back, thinking actually of supporting this push of the d pawn. He plays queen e4, which stops it and hits my hits my b pawn, so I save my b pawn, and then he plays b4. So he's going to try and push through on the queen side. And now I develop my bishop. I realize I can't actually push the d pawn in this circumstance because the e pawn was hanging. So having retreated my queen here, I put the bishop in front of it. He plays b5. And this is okay for me. I thought he's kind of got somewhat of a rigid pawn structure here, but he has, he needs to find an active role for this bishop. But at least he's got his pawns off the color of his bishop, so there's holes like bishop here, for example, hitting my d pawn is an idea. So I go rook f to d8, support my d pawn, thinking of this push. He goes queen f3, and now I can play d5, so breaking through. Still about even, so all these breaks are not adding up to much just yet. He plays, here's his mistake. He needs to take, he did take, he takes d5, yeah. Queen takes, I took with the rook. I didn't want to get a trade of queens in just yet, and taking it with the rook is fine. Queen d1, and maybe queen d1 is not the most accurate move. At some point here I start to get a slight edge. Bishop to a3. Still, yeah, activating his bishop is a plan for white here. And rook to e8. I'm trying to figure out how I can push these pawns forward. Queen to b3. Pinning my rook, although it's not a real pin because the rook can always drop back here and defend the queen. And my king is defending the queen too. So, these last few moves, the engine starts to prefer black a little bit. So I push on. What does it say? It says rook d to d8. Dropping all the way back to here. And exchanging on f7. It thinks that's good for me. Okay. I play e4, keeping the queens on and just pushing ahead with the pawns. He takes, take with the rook, and bishop to b2, hitting my center pawn. So now this is an isolated pawn, but it's also a passed pawn, which is a great strength in the endgame. And if I can just hold on to it, I have pretty good prospects. And the engine thinks I can push d3 immediately. That's an interesting idea. Didn't know if it was yet safe to push that pawn, so I play a few more moves to try and prepare things. I go rook back to d8, and he could exchange, but he decided to play queen to d3 to blockade the pawn. And yeah, so that sequence illustrates why it would have been better for me to play d3. I need to play d3 because before some piece lands on that square. So I really should have pushed the pawn the first time I had the chance. Like the old saying goes, passed pawns must be pushed. And once again, it's about even. So he pushes me around a little bit with his bishop and then goes back. And I'm doing a little maneuvering to try and get my pieces into position to support the pawn push. And right here, okay, there's only a slight edge for black at this point if the most accurate move is played, which would be rook to c1. Rook takes, bishop takes, queen takes a4. I still pick up a pawn. Okay, so but the way he played it, bishop to c1, I grab a pawn, and I'm also potentially threatening this pawn, and that's how I get the winning edge. I think this is, from this point on, I don't relinquish the edge. There was a little back and forth up to this point, but now I'm clearly better. So rook to c3 was played, chasing his queen off of this d3 square and preparing to push my pawn. He goes queen to e4. And now I realized he left this pawn undefended by chasing his queen away, so I can just grab another pawn here. And even if he blockades my center pawn, then I have these pawns to push, and that's how the game works out at the end. He throws in a check, and now I always have to be careful about back rank mates here. So it's not completely simple, but still, bishop d2. I have a pretty strong advantage with these two outside pawns. I just have to be careful. Rook back to c6, chases queen away. Queen went to e4, and now d3, pushing the pawn as far as it will go. And also, it's not subject to attack from the bishop there, so it's a little easier to defend. And maybe I can get a rook onto this c2 square, help clear the path. Okay, but that is not actually the way it worked out. He went bishop e3, go queen d5. I'd be happy to exchange queens here now that I have a clear advantage. And this should be a winning endgame. He goes g3, and now I start. This pawn seems somewhat blockaded. I don't want to put it on a square where his bishop can attack it, so I just start pushing the pawns on the other side of the board. And his counterplay on the king side is too slow. b1, a4. At some point, well, actually, when the pawns are on the 6th rank, two pawns are worth more than a rook, so they're cancel that. They're actively approaching that point. Rook f to d1, okay, keeping in front of my pawns. Rook to c4, preparing the b push. Bishop g5, cancel that. Bishop g5. Okay, and I'm okay with the trade of bishops too. These trades don't hurt me, and I could have even. Well, I can't take that pawn without losing a pawn, so I'd rather keep my d pawn and not waste time capturing the g pawn. Just push on. I went with b4. Looks like a3 might have been even stronger, but this is good enough. King g2, a3, rook a1. Oh, that's the computer recommendation. He played king f3. Still, rook to c3 with the same idea, helping this pawn go forward. And now rook takes b4 is possible. Did I really play that? Interesting. Oh, well, it's still winning, but I completely overlooked that during the game. Look at that. Rook takes. After what I was saying, he didn't play rook takes. He played something else. But I can still win this. I just need to get my king out of hock because there's a threat of checkmate now. And then say rook a4 going after my a pawn. Rook to e5. Keeping his king cut off. Yeah, it would have been a much more difficult win. So this rook c3 move, as I was saying, you gotta be cautious. Should be an easy win, but you can't just give points away. So instead of rook c3, d2 could have been played. Also rook to how about this rook? Is that a playable move? King e3. Yeah, that stops me from. Yeah, it's not so simple. Okay, so I guess I need to play d2 here with the rook. With the pawn. Okay, rook c3, he played king e3, and now I get to play b3, which is what my plan was, and it's pretty much over. I can push these pawns at will. He goes king e4, hitting my rook, so I just drop back, He goes f4, and now b2. And yeah, I was still having a little bit of trouble calculating this. If I play my rook to here, he can actually take it. If I play my pawn to here, he can take the b pawn, and then when I queen, he's got the second rook to take the other pawn. So two pawns are stronger than one rook, but they're not stronger than two rooks. And he's got both his rooks in good position. So a little bit of maneuvering here still required. He went rook d2, stopping me from pushing my pawn, and I went rook to b3. Holding on to the holding on to the b pawn and preparing to push a2 rather. So we went rook b to d1. Okay, and that makes it simple. Now I can just queen. So after a few more moves, let's just go ahead and zip through the rest of them. It's all losing at this point. There's a mate in 2 there, and I won. So that's how the game ended. So pretty close struggle all the way through, and I just kind of gradually maneuvered and got an advantage against his pawns on the queen side there. So hope you guys found that interesting. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.